This week we are talking about growth. This week we are talking about growth habits, routines that ensure you create your very best life by reaching for better every single day. And today we're talking about courage as a growth habit. So courage as a growth habit equals digging into your fears regularly, looking to understand them, learn from them, and then move in the way of your dreams. Clarity, mindset, actions. This is not the same as being scared and doing it anyway. Sometimes courage can mean inaction. I mean just the intentional exploration of all the things that make you squirm. So, what does courage as a habit for growth look like? These are the 5 ways I practice courage routinely, and I work with my clients to practice courage routinely. 1, feeling the feels, aka practicing emotional self-awareness. And this takes 2 steps. 1, you gotta name it to tame it. Our fears fester in the darkness like gremlins. And if you have not seen that 1980s pop film, let me tell you, gremlins are these gross little creatures that when they're exposed to sunlight, they melt and die. And that is exactly what happens to our fears. Oftentimes, it's the secrecy of them that keeps them so caught up. So that's why name it to tame it. You do that daily journaling in your journal. So name it to tame it. Then you got to sit with it. Step 2. The goal of courage as a growth habit isn't to feel better. It's understand, learn, so you know what to do. We feel discomfort and we tend to jump into this fix-it mode. But how do you know what to do if you don't know how you feel and why you feel that way, right? So sit with it. Sit with the discomfort. Courage, though, is also leaning into happy emotions. So I cry over everything. Movies, Shark Tank, reality TV, and most especially in my real life, I cry during overwhelming moments of joy, right? So overwhelming moments of joy for me look like my nephew smiling at me on FaceTime. My niece once wrote a book about the 5 most important women in the 1900s. It was a picture book or something, and I wept. So I cry so hard during overwhelming moments of joy. It's embarrassing and I hate it. I hate crying. It's like vomiting to me. It's like, oh no, here comes the, and then they just spill over. Like every time I wish they wouldn't, they just always do. But I have to stand loud and proud with it because that is where my emotion shows. That is how I express how amazing I'm feeling. And I always think that maybe if I just keep leaning in and practicing leaning in, I'll cry less. I'm still waiting for that to happen. But courage is naming your emotions, good and bad, and sitting with them, both good and bad. Leaning into joy can sometimes feel super uncomfortable. So, feeling the feels and practicing emotional self-awareness, 1. 2, confronting and healing the stories you're telling yourself. So, being honest with yourself about where your doubts came from, who's caused them, when they came up, and then evaluating them. Do they serve you? Do they not? And for the ones that don't, you gotta forgive the people who screwed you over, who fucked you up, your parents, whatever. You gotta forgive yourself for being dumb and listening to your 17-year-old brother far into your 30s when you shouldn't be taking advice from a 17-year-old 17 years ago, right? And then you need to create new and empowering stories that will lead you forward. So that's 2, confronting and healing the stories you're telling yourself. The 3rd thing I do to practice courage routinely is communicating. So I heard recently in corporate America, I love corporate America, courageous conversations. So what are some courageous conversations you can have to practice, to create courage routinely? Speak up when someone says something out of line towards you or someone else. Apologize for wrongs. Being honest with others, how they make you feel. And this is another one, bad and good. So It is super courageous to tell people that you love them, that you're proud of them, that what they did was so nice and it meant the world to you. Those are things that make us feel so uncomfortable, and it's the courage that leads us to love more. So, good and bad, communicating how people make us feel, and asking for help. It's really humbling, and it has been super courageous. So, those are the ways that you can courageously communicate. Number 4, learning and unlearning. You don't know what you don't know. We are all products of our past and our experiences, and it's okay not to know, right? But for growth, you must, 1, seek new knowledge in the form of different perspectives and more information on what you think you already know. And then 2, you have to commit to 2 things. 1, you have to unlearn things. Old ways of thinking, like systemic racism and racism that came from your family, you have to take time to unlearn those things. Old ways, right? And you need to be comfortable with relearning things. So growth is not a straight line. It's more like a spiral. You don't just encounter things once and then get over them and move on. Like, for example, I am a perfectionist. And it pops up in my life like a hydra with 10 million heads. I am consistently working on how to strive for excellence versus perfection with my coach. I'm consistently realizing that I'm paralyzing myself and not moving as quickly as I'd like because of perfectionism. Like it's like, when does this end? And the truth is it doesn't. It's like a spiral. So this is where it started, and then I meet it again here when I'm this much stronger and grown, and then I meet it here, and then I meet it here. Like, I'm sorry I can't do a visual. I hope that was helpful, but it's not linear. You will encounter the same things, and you will need to relearn lessons that you thought you already knew and unlearn lessons that you thought you already unlearned. So it is a process. So learning and unlearning, number 4. And 5th, finally, is trying. And you got to not worry that you're going to suck, right? Because we all suck when we try new things or when we are trying to do old things better or differently, right? We're always going to suck, right? At some point. I am someone who is like, go hard or go home, right? Like, it needs, like, I like everything big, but like small is a pathway to big, easy is, hard is a pathway to easy, slow is a pathway to fast, right? So you have to go through this time of sucking before you produce things that you really love. And so often we protect our ego and we don't put any effort because we don't want to feel embarrassed. But growth does not happen in our comfort zone. So you got to try. So that's number 5. So what does courage look like for you? How can you create a habit of courage? Can you be better at practicing emotional awareness? Can you confront and heal some of the stories you're telling yourself about whether you're good at this or good at that or suck at this or suck at that? Can you have more courageous conversations? What do you need to learn, unlearn, relearn? And what do you need to try at, right? What do you need to try at? So how can you create your habit of courage? A pro tip for showing up courageously is working with a coach. I work on increasing all 5 of these areas consistently with my clients.